All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. The State of the Nation begins right now. We talk about matters, politics, and everything in between there. We have His Excellency Kimani Wamatangi, Kiambu Governor is here. Edwin Sifuna, Senator for Nairobi, is also here with us. And Silvanus Osoro, Member of Parliament for South Mugirango. Thank you so much for making time. This morning, we'd like to hear from you, mostly at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. Let's start off with something that we were talking about earlier on the GMO debate. Governors are opposed to this, saying that there was no public participation. Let's hear what your thoughts are. Silvanus, what are your thoughts on this issue around the GMO?
Thank you very much, Trevor. You see, this GMO debate is being discussed in the streets and in the media. And from where I see it, it's not a discussion that I would want us to, we are discussing it so casually without resolutions. I mean, within places that we can't really make decisions. And we're even too serious as a country that mere statements made by anyone in public service are taken so serious. I do not want to appear like I'm in support or against the GMO because I'm not an expert. Because when you look at the people who oppose currently the GMO are the people who supported it a few years ago, like the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga when he was Prime Minister. I mean, the records are there to show. And the people who support it are the people who opposed it then, when Raila Odinga was supporting it. So there is, as politicians, we are not the right people to make a position, or rather to even bring an opinion in regard to the GMOs. My opinion would be that we need to hear the experts. We need to see the agricultural, the food experts come out. I don't know whether there is such a union or association that will call maybe the association of, or something like the Agriculture and Food Authority Department in the Ministry of Agriculture, which I believe should be having experts for such, so that they explain to us the pros and cons. Yeah. I mean, but from the basic facts that we know, is that GMO is not a new thing in this world, not necessarily this country. These are foods that are, being consumed across the world. And there could be pros and cons, yes, but in my opinion, the negativity is not on the prediction of death and diseases as this big, portrayed or made, people are being made to believe. Yeah. For me, the negativity is the economic impact and how we want to invest in our agriculture system here in this country. Like, for example, when you tell people that you need to have GMOs importation in this country now, where do you take the farmers? Where do you take their food that is in their coffers? I mean, really, we need to nurture these people. These are people who've kept a lot of tons and tons and tons of food in their silos. So we got to look at it from that angle. Okay. But these are the definition of poisoning and, cancer and stuff like that shouldn't come from, a layman like myself or a politician like myself. Right. I am looking at it from the point where farmers should be told where they should take their produce. They invested in that produce. Now, I'm also looking at it from this other point where the government the other day gave out free or subsidized fertilizers, and they told people to plant maize. So you open the importation of maize, of GMO maize. Then after 3 or 4 months or so, where do you want these farmers to take their food? I mean, really, you've got to sell to government. So are we nurturing people? Okay. We are not. So that is the point I'm arguing from. But these are the poison point, the cancer thing, we are not consulted. Who are you? Okay. I'm a politician. I mean, why would you consult a politician about importation? Consult, in terms of poisoning and stuff and diseases, consult experts. Okay. You can't consult me about whether it will bring negative impact to my body. I don't know. But
Sifuna, is in that where the problem is? The experts themselves are divided.
That is exactly where the problem is. I'm very surprised that my brother Silvanus Osoro doesn't see the need for people to consult him about his own health. So I'll speak for myself because under the Constitution in Article 10, Trevor, the problem is that whenever any state organ makes or implements public policy decision. And this is a major public policy decision because the lifting of a ban that was imposed because of a certain reason, when it is being lifted, that is a matter that is under Article 10, that whenever you make such a public policy decision, you are bound by these principles and values of governance, amongst them participation of the people, or what we call public participation, patriotism, human rights, and sustainable development. Yeah. So, Mheshimiwa Osoro, the problem is that we as a country at some point decided that we were going to ban GMOs, and there was a basis for that ban. That conversation that you are saying should be had, the science explained to us whether this is harmful or not, needs to happen prior to the lifting of the ban. That is the only problem we have, so that we can have opportunity. Because at what point will you have that opportunity to listen to the science if the food is already here? And as we speak, Mheshimiwa Osoro, you know that there's already ships that are docking in Mombasa, and people don't even want to tell us whether that is organic maize or whether it is GMO. So the problem is that this decision, because it affects all of us, there should be a conversation, there should be public participation. Let the expert explain this thing to us. And in fact, the question we are asking is, if there was a ban imposed and there was a reason for the ban, if the science has changed, if we have new information, we are not fools, we are not impervious to knowledge, we are not allergic to learning, Osoro. Teach us the science. We are teachable people. Mheshimiwa Wamatangi here. We have capacity to learn and appreciate new science, you know. So you don't just assume that because Sifuna is not a scientist, if you explain to him how a chicken and an egg, which one comes first, he will not understand. I mean, please show us some respect. Number two, Trevor, that respect that we expect from public servants is not something that we have just come up with. It is under our constitution in chapter 6. It requires that, you see, these public offices that we occupy, you exercise the powers of that office in a manner that demonstrates respect for the people. We sat here when we were doing the vetting of these cabinet secretaries, and we told you that some of these people do not have the wherewithal to be cabinet secretaries. And in fact, if you look at the minority report that was written by the minority side in the National Assembly, we singled out these current CS that people are talking about impeaching, Mheshimiwa Moses Kuria, because we know who he is. He should exercise the powers of his office in a manner that demonstrates respect for the people. You cannot stand up and say, oh, you know, in Kenya there are 1,000 ways to die. Let's add one more way to die. You are going to die anyway. Something is good to kill a man, as we say here in Nairobi. Trevor, that does not demonstrate respect for the people who you are supposed to be serving. And number two, you are a servant. You're not our boss. You can't just say, hey, mutakula GMO, mupende musipende. It's not possible. So I am happy that the governors have added their voice to this. So the governors have spoken, the members of parliament have spoken, both in the National Assembly, in the Senate, the church has spoken, everybody has spoken, the farmers have spoken. Why can't you just listen to us? That before you do this Gazette notice, allow for this process to go on, let people debate the science, let people show us the pros and the cons, assure the public, because right now, even if you see the way the ordinary mwananchi is speaking, people are frightened about this GMO. And number two, Trevor, I had some people saying, oh, let this maize come in, then you label it and say, this is GMO, this is non-GMO, now you have a choice. It is a false choice for somebody who has not eaten. You cannot tell somebody who has not eaten that this is GMO is 20 shillings and this one is non-GMO is 250. Now you have a choice. It is a false choice. The person in that particular situation does not have a choice that we are presenting. So let us have the conversation. Okay. Let there be respect. As a Catholic, I suspect Wamatangi is Catholic as well. He has the demeanor of a Catholic. As a Catholic, we take our directives and directions from the Pope. And the Pope already issued an encyclical in 2015 on the position of the Catholic Church on GMOs. And he has said, as a Catholic, Sifuna, I cannot touch it. Okay. So, musiingilie mambo yangu ya kanisa yangu.
Okay. Yeah. But you know, the Council of Governors Agriculture Committee has faulted the government for failing to consult the public for lifting this ban. But they're not saying whether it's a bad thing or a good thing.
Trevor, morning. Let me also say good morning to our viewers. And as I join the discussion, I think, Trevor, the mess in the discussion is really that simply there has not been proper education first, and then moving forward, then people get to understand. After they understand, then you can make sense of what you're supposed to do. But also to decry the misinformation in the discussion right away from all over, such that now people are tending to add so much information or misinformation to the already existing misinformation. Trevor, I think what we need to tell our viewers is really what first does it mean to genetically modify food? And if you ask me, I would give an example for our viewers who are watching and say, remember when we were trying to fight malaria, and you would find that a drug for malaria would be made, and then it would be administered on people to fight malaria. Onwards, the malaria strain would mutate and become resistant to that disease. Scientists would get back on the table and modify that drug, give it a strain that will now tackle the tougher strain of the disease. And so until finally you're able to overcome malaria. Now, in genetically modified foods, what happens is that they modify the genes of the food for certain or specific reasons or issues. For example, if you have a certain pest, that attacks maize or corn in a certain region, that particular maize seed can be modified. The strain can be modified in a way that it will resist that type of pest in that area, and definitely now you're going to have more harvest. That's literally what it means to modify the food. The question is, have we had enough education to the people to be able to understand that this is really what it means? The discussion on GMOs for a long time was preceded by misinformation, and most of the misinformation was on fear-mongering, a lot of it, so that if you eat this food, you'll die, it will make you explode, and you'll become obese. So many things were said about it. And I think to add to the scare, there was a time most of the media was running photos of, for example, if it is a pumpkin, you find a pumpkin photograph somewhere in Netherlands that looks like, a whole sphere. You find a banana that is like a javelin, and people would ask themselves, how come that these GMO foods are this big? And it got into people's minds that it is chemicals that have been introduced that are essentially dangerous to health. I think what we would need to do as a country is first to take people through the steps of getting to understand what GMO is, and then once we've done that, we can get into then an agreed phased introduction. I say phased introduction because that question, as has been addressed by my two colleagues here, is an important question. Farmers had already planted. Farmers will be harvesting. Others still have harvest. So that question of when do you get to introduce that, what happens to our farmers must also be addressed. So that eventually, once we agree if we are going to go GMO, then it will be in a well-structured way, picking out regions, what we are modifying against, and then what is the place of our farmers. At the end of the day, Trevor, even if you go to countries that have adopted GMOs, that choice is still there. You'll find that when you go to a supermarket, they'll have a small shelf there where they label organic foods. And then they have now the rest of their last. That's still there. However, even if you go to Europe, you still find that there's that option. And the other option,
But let me bring in Silvanus on this. But like you mentioned, let's leave it to the experts because there's a lot of details that's still not there. But now let's bring in the politics. There's a whole conversation here where MPs are split over plans to oust Moses Kuria. This is after 10 million is the number of bags of maize the government is planning to import, according to a recent statement by Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria. There's not clear whether this is GMO or not, but should he face the axe over this attempt to import maize at a time when farmers are harvesting?
You see, we are we have a different or unique social status or socio, way of living as a society. I mean, really, we are adversarial in nature. Like, we debate virtually over everything, and something that comes to our mind anytime somebody messes up or appears to differ with somebody is punitive. Like, how do we punish this person? Really, we are not people who think of correcting someone or rectifying someone. And to the issue of impeaching Moses Kuria, I think it's premature. I mean, really, because number one, it is a statement that he made. And it's clear that the Gazette notice hasn't been issued yet. And it's a statement. It's something that, to the extent that somebody is already saying that there are containers at the airport and everything, we can't really confirm or deny that. But it is an intention on what to do, like expression of intention or interest on what should be happening. So we shouldn't be thinking too quick. I think the conversation is healthy, but it shouldn't be prosecuted through what I'm seeing. Like, we call a press conference today, we threaten to collect signatures, we want to pitch this and this. I mean, really, you can't have a malaika or some angel come from heaven and correct things. I mean, call this minister. We've got Article 95 of the Constitution, Article 96 with the Senate. Call this minister, let him appear before the Agriculture Committee, before this other committee, explain what he meant, in this whole thing, and then correct him, let opinions. I mean, we should have this discussion now in a more structured way, because it's a discussion that has been happening. This is not the first time we're discussing about the GMO. It again arose, as I said, in the 11th, I think it was in 11th or 10th Parliament, thereabout. And people defended it. And some people, of course, were opposing it then. But again, I want to tell you this. It is in this show, in the last, I think about 2 or 3 weeks, that a clip was played here of starvation and children dying, animals. I mean, really, we've just forgotten too easy. Just recently, we saw people dying in the, arid-prone areas like the northeastern and other places. Today, as we are speaking, His Excellency Deputy President is going to, I think, Gatanga today for distribution of food, relief food. And after that, I think he's going to Marsabit or something like that. So really, even as we discuss about the pros and cons of importation of GMO food, again, look at it from the flip side. There are people who are suffering. There are people who are dying. And there is food that the government wants to open up, at least for now, to mitigate the challenge that you're having. What the government is telling you is that within their silos, they do not have sufficient food for distribution.
Farmers say that they have enough.
Now, farmers say they have enough. But there is a challenge here. Even as we defend farmers, because I think Honorable Sifuna is here, because it comes from a region where they plant this maize for sale. For us, of course, in my region, it's obvious we plant for our own consumption because of our insufficient land. But let me say this. Even the farmers have an issue. What the farmers are doing, they've kept the food, in their granaries for projection purposes in terms of price increase and stuff like that. When people are suffering,
hoarding.
Yes, the government is asking them at times, we are now, the market is open, bring your food here, bring your maize here, we want to buy. Yeah. But most farmers from these other regions like Western and Rift Valley and everything, they are waiting for the prices. There is something they call a guaranteed minimum returns. They want the government to set some guaranteed minimum returns before they dispose of their food to government. But again, on the other hand, people are suffering, people are dying. There are children who are starving. Animals are dying. The government is saying, at least for a period of time, let's open up the GMO market. Then, I mean, who tells you that it can't be a strategy to also have this maize sold? Because the Gazette notice hasn't been signed. Okay. Because it could be part of the strategy. Yeah. So, it's a possibility.
It's not very clear whether what is going to be imported is GM or not, but there's an intention of importing 10 million bags at a time when there is an allegation that the farmers are hoarding the maize in anticipation of a price increment. Is the government justified?
I have a few problems with what my brother Osoro is saying, because it is they who were promising. In fact, both sides of a divide promised farmers that there's going to be a minimum guaranteed return on their produce. In fact, Moses Kuria himself during the campaign was one of the biggest proponents of MGR. So it doesn't surprise me personally that once again they are breaking their promises, because this is who they are. We know them. Number two, Trevor, you can see that it is clear that they are blackmailing farmers. They are threatening farmers with this Gazette notice that unless you sell this maize to us at the price we want, we are going to buy maize from elsewhere. This is a declaration of war on the maize farmers. They have done nothing wrong. I mean, Osoro, this is your produce. You are the one, if you've grown bananas, you know how much it has cost you to grow the bananas. You go to the market knowing what you expect out of it. We in Western Kenya do not grow maize as a hobby. It is a commercial enterprise, so you cannot tell us that we should sell the maize at the price at which you want. This war between farmers and traders, Trevor, has raged on for years. In fact, yesterday I was chiding my brother Cherargei because on this particular one, we are on the same side. But we were reminding them that when the farmers in Western Kenya were crying about importation of sugar that was killing our industry, in fact, the industry is basically dead. Mumias is dead, Nzoia is dead. We told them that if you are looking on as a crocodile feeds on the neighbor's children, once it is done feeding on those children, it will eat your children. Now, it is like the people in the North Rift. I don't know wamekosea nani. I don't know who they have angered, because you can see they are lifting the ban on GMO, and now they are banning athletics. You know. So it is like they have offended someone. The people in the North Rift need to sit down and ask themselves who they have offended. But what we need to do, my brother, even when we argue about people starving, you know, this question of food security, if you just Google what food security means, Trevor, it means that when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences. It doesn't just have to be any food, Osoro. If you are giving me maize that is going to poison me with aflatoxin, or whether it is GMO, it's going to have harmful effects, that's not food security. That food needs to be safe, and it needs to meet the food preferences of people. Yesterday I was speaking on the floor of the Senate, and I told them that even if you lock Sifuna as a Luya man in a store full of rice and njahe, it is possible for me to die of starvation, because that's not my food preference. You know, it has to be ugali for me. It is possible even if you have 10 sacks of rice there, Aluya will still die of starvation, because that's not food security. We cannot be forced to eat the things that we don't want to eat, Osoro. This is what food security means. Number two, they even identified in the motion we were discussing yesterday by Senator Gataya Mofaya, he identified the reasons why we are in the situation we are. There is the question of inadequate rainfall, decline in the number of farmers and the farmlands under cultivation. They surprisingly also acknowledge that the war in Ukraine is a factor, and then the high cost of inputs. We in the opposition had certain proposals, Trevor, to address this question of food security. So on the question of inadequate rainfall, we propose that we move away from rain-fed agriculture. We try and increase the land under irrigation. Yeah. The decline in the number of farmers. What has caused people not to engage in farming the way they used to do? It is the attitude like the one that we are seeing here from Osoro, that they think that people should just be patriotic and grow maize and distribute maize to their countrymen. It is a commercial enterprise. Number two, at some point during the last few years, the deputy president himself, when farmers were complaining that they were not getting returns on maize, he's the one who was telling people to plant avocados. And as I have demonstrated to you, as a Luya man, I do not think that there is any substitute for maize. You cannot tell me to eat avocado and sleep. You know, it's not possible. So these are the reasons why farmers continue to stop planting maize, just like it happened in the cane fields. Now, on the question of the high cost of inputs, we addressed it as an opposition. When we were campaigning, we told people that we would like to increase manufacturing, local manufacturing of even those inputs. Yeah. If all the tractors are manufactured here, if all the hose and the farm equipment is manufactured here, it is possible that it could be cheaper, including fertilizer. Osoro, as a leader in the House, should tell us what happened to the fertilizer plant in Eldoret. Those are the things that farmers would want you to address. If the cost of input is high, then you force a farmer to plant, and then you force him to sell under the market price or below what he actually incurred in terms of bringing that crop up. You are going to demoralize that farmer. So these are the issues we need to discuss. Yeah. And the good thing is that we on both political divides had certain promises we made that were common. Osoro, you promised MGR, we also promised MGR. Give the farmers what you promised. Okay. You don't have to run away from them.
All right.
No?
Well, Matangi, what is the solution to this? Is it impeaching the CS? Not even a solution.
You know, Trevor, I think in diagnosing the problem, first we establish the position, because even as we make the argument general, and I know this is attributed to statements by the CS, I think you've seen in the dailies that indeed the PS made it clear that the actual position as we stand now is that there is no standing recommendation to import the maize. That's the position. The rest of the discussion is hypothetical, if you ask me. And there's nothing wrong in hypothesizing, what would be a better way to move. But it's important for people to know that the current position is that that recommendation has not been made. Proposals could be there. And then secondly, I don't think even yourselves in the media have any either images, evidence that there are ships that are docking right now. So those two we need to distance. But that does not mean that we can't discuss the matter. We will still discuss it, but let's discuss it based on facts. Do you impeach the CS? This discussion has been there before, Trevor. It's not the first time that this discussion has been here. It's been there many, many times over. Has government imported maize before? Yes, it has. You remember, many times over when there were deficits. The government has had to import maize. So the prevailing question, in my view, is how much of stocks do we have of maize, either with our farmers or with National Cereals and Produce Board? What are our strategic reserves as we speak, as of today? Because besides all the politics, one of the cardinal responsibilities of government is to ensure that, ahead of the politics, of our other politics, that our people are safe, secure, and secure that there are food reserves enough, just in case anything happens. So I would tell members of parliament that the best approach in this is to have a very level, sober debate about our way forward. Impeaching the CS for making that statement would not be a solution that Kenyans are looking for. Can we ask our people, one, with the amount of maize that we are growing and our harvests moving forward, do we usually have surpluses? So do we need an intervention from GMOs? And if the answer is yes, how do we roll it out? If the answer is no, how do we then supplement our farmers to produce more? Remember, Trevor, ourselves, and like myself as the governor of Kiambu, we have already made interventions that are strategic right now to ensure that our farmers still continue to produce maize. We have distributed seeds with this rain. Remember, government rolled out subsidized fertilizer, which we have distributed to farmers. That does not mean that when there is this debate on GMOs, that government or ourselves as governors at the ground level, that we have abandoned the existing strategy of ensuring that our farmers continue to do what we are going to do. So I would be, Trevor, saying simply that the actual discussion or debate should not be swallowed by the politics of it, because we can play politics with anything else, but not the lives, not the security of food of our people. Yeah. So let's veer the discussion back to where it's supposed to be. Is it that we need the GMO introduction in this country right now? And I think that can be answered much more soberly, especially when the ministry tells us what is our position as of now. Okay. We must also say this, Trevor, that we should be discussing this now within the current circumstances. We have rain. It was not like a few months before when we were having drought. Should we be preparing our farmers to plant enough, enable them to do so? I think that should be the way forward.
All right, we'll take a quick break here on Daybreak. When we come back, we're still talking about the state of the nation. When we come back, the topic of hearing of petitions against 4 IEBC commissioners commences. We'll talk about that the bit Cherera challenges 4 days timeline to respond to ouster plea in the High Court. But I would mostly like to hear from you. Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We'll sample some of your views right after this break. All right, see you shortly.